The cameras panned across the roaring stadium, lights burning like fire in the night sky. It was week 3 of the NFL season, and the Kansas City Chiefs walked onto the field carrying the weight of doubt heavier than their pads. 2 straight losses behind them, critics already sharpening their knives, fans whispering that Patrick Mahomes wasn't the same man anymore. Every headline screamed decline. Every voice seemed to say, maybe the Chiefs' dynasty is over. On the opposite sideline stood the New York Giants. A team wounded, desperate, 0-2, but still clinging to pride. Their fans carried hope in their eyes, believing this might finally be the moment to turn it all around. It wasn't just a game. It was survival. Whoever lost tonight would sink deeper into darkness. The whistle blew. The game began. The Giants started with confidence. Their quarterback barked commands, the offensive line braced like walls of steel, and the ball snapped with a crack that echoed into the night. The first drive looked promising, short gains, controlled passes, moving the chains inch by inch. The crowd cheered with cautious hope. But as they reached the red zone, the Chiefs' defense stiffened. A pass batted down. A run stuffed in the backfield. 3rd down, incomplete. The Giants settled for 3 points. It wasn't much. But it was a start. Kansas City answered with uncertainty. Mahomes dropped back, but the Giants' rush closed in fast. His first throw missed its target. The second, a short gain. 3rd down, he scrambled, searching, hoping, and slid just before the chains. A punt. Groans echoed from Chiefs fans watching around the world. Was this another night of heartbreak? Back and forth it went. A battle of frustration. The Giants tried again, but penalties killed their rhythm. Kansas City fought for control, but drops and missed blocks dragged them down. The scoreboard barely moved. Every minute that passed, the tension grew thicker. And then, something shifted. Midway through the second quarter, with the Chiefs down by a slim margin, Mahomes stood tall in the pocket. The pressure collapsed around him, a wall of blue jerseys closing in. He should have gone down. He should have been crushed. But with a flick of his wrist, the ball sailed through the chaos, threading the needle between defenders. A perfect strike into the hands of his receiver. 1st down. The stadium exploded. That was the spark. Suddenly, the Chiefs were alive. Mahomes moved with confidence, threading passes, orchestrating drives with surgical precision. His receivers caught fire, running routes like men possessed. The offensive line held firm. And when the ball crossed the goal line for Kansas City's first touchdown, the roar shook the very ground. But the Giants were not done. They pushed back, desperate to reclaim control. Their quarterback hurled passes into tight windows, their running back fought for every brutal yard. Yet each time they seemed on the brink of striking, Kansas City's defense slammed the door shut. An interception here. A sack there. Momentum began to crumble in New York's hands. Halftime came. Chiefs leading. Giants limping. In the locker rooms, 2 worlds unfolded. For Kansas City, fire burned. Players shouted, pounding lockers, feeding off the energy of their leader. Mahomes looked into their eyes and said, "We are not done. We finish this." For the Giants, silence reigned. Heads hung low. Their coach's voice tried to cut through the fog, but doubt had already taken root. The second half began, and with it, the unraveling. Kansas City dominated. Each drive bled the Giants dry. Field goals, touchdowns, every possession a dagger. The defense, smelling weakness, attacked like predators in the wild. The Giants' quarterback grew rattled, throwing off balance, missing open targets. The offensive line cracked. The receivers dropped passes. The fans booed. 22-9. That was the score when the final whistle blew. Kansas City had done it. their first win of the season. A victory that silenced critics, at least for one night. Patrick Mahomes stood tall, his arms raised, a warrior reclaiming his throne. The Chiefs' sideline erupted in celebration, players hugging, shouting, tears of relief in their eyes. On the other side, devastation. The Giants walked off the field slowly, faces pale, helmets hanging at their sides. 0-3. A record that spelled disaster. Their fans stared in disbelief, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Was this the beginning of the end for their season? But even as the Chiefs smiled and the Giants mourned, something darker lingered in the shadows. A truth not yet revealed. A storm not yet unleashed. Because what happened on this night was only the beginning. The cameras didn't show what was waiting behind closed doors. They didn't capture the whispers, the anger, the betrayals that would follow. And when the truth finally comes out, it will shake everything we thought we knew. The stadium lights dimmed, but the noise of the night lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. The scoreboard still glowed, Chiefs 22, Giants 9. To the casual fan, it was just another game, another win, another loss. But for those inside the tunnels and locker rooms, the real story was only beginning. In the Chiefs' locker room, celebration thundered like a storm. Players shouted, danced, poured water bottles over one another. Reporters crowded outside, waiting for quotes, waiting for headlines. Patrick Mahomes sat quietly at his locker, helmet at his feet, towel draped over his shoulders. His teammates celebrated, but his eyes were heavy. He knew something. He felt something. A victory on the scoreboard did not erase the cracks beneath the surface. He lifted his head slowly, staring at the ceiling as if searching for an answer. The cameras would never show this moment. The fans would never see this silence. But Mahomes knew, the fight wasn't over. It was only shifting to a different battlefield. Across the hallway, in the Giants' locker room, despair hung thick in the air. Helmets slammed against lockers. Some players sat motionless, jerseys still clinging to their skin, sweat mixing with disappointment. Their coach paced back and forth, shouting about discipline, effort, execution. But no one seemed to hear him. They weren't listening anymore. His words bounced off tired faces like echoes in an empty cave. One player stood suddenly, fists clenched, voice shaking with rage. "We can't keep doing this. This isn't on us. This is bigger than what's happening on the field." The room went silent. Eyes turned. The coach froze mid-step. For a brief moment, it felt like truth had slipped out, a truth no one wanted to say out loud. Reporters gathered outside, microphones ready, waiting for cracks to widen. And when the doors opened, the cracks spilled into the public. Giants players gave short, clipped answers. Some avoided questions altogether. Their coach forced a smile, saying, "We'll bounce back. This isn't the end." But even his voice betrayed doubt. The headlines the next morning didn't talk about resilience. They talked about collapse. Giants fall to 0-3. Questions swirl around locker room. Coach on the hot seat. Meanwhile, Kansas City's win was praised. Mahomes back on track. Chiefs silence doubters. But buried in the noise, in the endless replays of touchdowns and interceptions, were whispers. Anonymous reports. Strange details. Something about tensions in the Chiefs' locker room. Something about arguments behind closed doors. Something that suggested not all was well in victory. The city of New York boiled with frustration. Fans called into radio shows, voices cracking with anger. "We're done. Season's over. This team has no fight." On social media, clips of missed passes and dropped catches spread like wildfire. Memes mocked the Giants' collapse. But hidden among the jokes were serious questions. about contracts, about management, about whether the team had already given up. Kansas City wasn't immune either. Their fans celebrated, yes, but the doubts didn't vanish. Some called the win lucky. Others pointed out that the Giants weren't exactly Giants anymore, they were broken. The question loomed, was this win proof of a comeback, or just a bandage over a deeper wound? In a dimly lit bar in downtown New York, two men sat quietly at the counter, watching highlights replayed on a muted TV screen. They weren't wearing team colors. They weren't celebrating or mourning. They were studying. One leaned closer to the other and muttered, "They're not ready for what's coming. Not the Giants. Not the Chiefs. None of them." The other nodded slowly, his face unreadable in the shadows. Back in Kansas City, Mahomes walked out of the stadium long after the cameras were gone. The parking lot was nearly empty, the night cold and still. He pulled his jacket tighter and glanced over his shoulder. For just a moment, he thought he saw someone watching him from the far corner of the lot, a figure in a hood, motionless under the streetlight. But when he blinked, the figure was gone. He shook his head and climbed into his car. But the unease didn't fade. Days passed, but the noise didn't die down. Talk shows dissected every play. Reporters grilled coaches with sharper questions. Players avoided microphones. And in both Kansas City and New York, something darker began to grow. In New York, rumors of locker room betrayals. In Kansas City, whispers of a fractured brotherhood behind the smiles. And then, late one evening, a story broke. An insider leak. A report claiming that not everything about the Chiefs' victory was clean. That something happened off the field, something no one dared to say out loud. The headline spread like wildfire, igniting debates, suspicions, and fear. And as the words filled screens across America, both the Chiefs and the Giants found themselves dragged into a storm far bigger than football. Because this wasn't just about a game anymore. It was about power. About control. About secrets buried deep beneath the turf. And when those secrets finally come to light, they will destroy more than just teams. They will destroy legacies. The leak spread like fire across the nation. Phones buzzed, screens lit up, conversations stopped mid-sentence. It wasn't about touchdowns or missed tackles anymore. It wasn't about a simple win or loss. This was something darker. The story claimed that the Chiefs' victory over the Giants wasn't as clean as it looked. Anonymous sources whispered of tension on the sidelines, of hidden disputes, of a rift tearing through the Chiefs' locker room. Even worse, it suggested that someone inside the organization had been working against them, leaking strategies, feeding chaos, ensuring the Giants had an edge that night. But the Giants still failed to use it. The world reeled. If the leak was true, it meant betrayal lived inside the very walls of Kansas City. And if betrayal was inside Kansas City, what else was hidden? Reporters swarmed both franchises. In New York, questions turned sharp, cutting into players like blades. Did you know about the leak? Who sabotaged who? Is the coaching staff compromised? No one had answers. Players shook their heads, coaches dodged questions, management released statements that only deepened the mystery. In Kansas City, the celebration had already turned sour. The locker room that once rang with laughter now simmered with suspicion. Eyes darted from player to player, searching for the mole. Conversations stopped when someone new entered the room. Trust, the one thing a team cannot survive without, had been broken. Patrick Mahomes felt it most of all. He was their leader, the face of the franchise, the symbol of hope. And yet, in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the image of that hooded figure in the parking lot. Watching. Waiting. Silent. Who was he? What did he know? The Giants' collapse only added fuel to the fire. Fans demanded answers, demanded heads roll. Their coach, once confident, now stood in front of cameras with hollow eyes. Rumors swirled that his days were numbered. Players whispered that he had lost the locker room long before the Chiefs game. Some even accused him of knowing about the leak and doing nothing. The NFL launched an investigation. Phones were seized. Emails combed through. The league wanted the truth. But the deeper they dug, the stranger it became. Messages led nowhere. Sources vanished. And always, in the background, the same shadow appeared. A faceless figure pulling strings, moving pieces, laughing from the dark. And then came the night everything broke open. It was late, long after practice. Mahomes sat alone in the film room, staring at plays on the screen. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the projector. Then, a sound. A door creaked open. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing. A man stepped inside, but pulled low, face hidden. The same figure. The shadow from the parking lot. Mahomes rose slowly, heart pounding, voice steady but sharp. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure didn't answer at first. He pulled a chair, sat down, and finally spoke in a gravelly voice. "You think this is about one game? You think this is about Chiefs and Giants? No. This is about control. About who owns the story. And I own the story." Mahomes clenched his fists, ready for anything. The figure slid a file across the table. Inside were documents, transcripts, proof of everything, the leak, the betrayals, the manipulation. But it wasn't just one team. It was bigger. It was the league itself. Deals made in shadows. Outcomes influenced. A game that wasn't always just a game. "Why show me this?" Mahomes demanded. The figure leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. "Because you need to know who's really in charge. And because I'm done. My part is over. But yours is just beginning." And just like that, he stood, walked into the darkness, and vanished. The next morning, the leak was everywhere. The documents hit every outlet. Headlines screamed corruption, manipulation, betrayal. The NFL scrambled to contain the chaos. Coaches resigned. Executives were fired. Careers ended overnight. The Giants became the face of collapse, a team torn apart not just by failure, but by the truth that they had been pawns in a much larger game. Their season spiraled into ruin, their fans left with nothing but anger and betrayal. The Chiefs, though victorious on the field, faced their own reckoning. They had won, but at what cost? The celebration was gone, replaced with silence. Their brotherhood fractured, their legacy tainted by questions they could never fully answer. Patrick Mahomes stood before cameras, eyes weary but voice steady. "We play this game for the love of it. For the fans. For each other. Whatever's been exposed, it doesn't change that. We will fight. We will rebuild. And we will rise." The league survived. Time moved forward. Games continued. But nothing was the same. The league had changed everything. Fans no longer saw football as just football. They saw the shadows behind it, the strings being pulled, the faces that had stayed hidden for too long. And yet, as the season wore on, as new stories took the spotlight and the old ones faded, the memory of that night lingered. The night the Chiefs silenced the Giants. The night a leak tore open the walls of the league. The night the truth stepped out of the shadows. It ended careers. It ended dreams. But it also ended illusions. And for the first time in a long time, everything ended exactly as it was meant to.